Here at Visit with Spirit, we are not out to prove or disprove anything. We are not asking anyone to believe or not believe. We are asking that you, the listener, are compassionate to what our guests have experienced, whether or not you believe, that you respect their journey as we help them on their path of healing.
Welcome to Visit with Spirit, and we're here to listen to stories from those who have had a paranormal experience, as well as to help them process, understand, and feel good about it. Hello, souls and spirits. Welcome back to Visit with Spirit. I'm your host, Lisa.
And I'm your host, JD.
Today we have guest Dani. Dani, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here with you two bright, luminous souls.
Oh, thank you.
Yay. So Dani has had some experiences with a haunted house, stories that we always love to hear. So Dani, tell us more about your experiences.
This was probably at least 10 years ago that this experience occurred. My son and I, he was probably about 12 at the time, we belonged to a group called the Thriftaholics that were based out of New York City. And we would specifically go around to, Salvation Armies, Goodwills. We'd actually create these routes and then go from store to store to store all around the city.
That's so cool.
It's very cool. Yeah. And the group is still in existence. It's a meetup group. So anyone can join if they're close to New York. So we would host these thrifts, and then we started to branch out a little bit. And so the organizer of that group, he knew of like a town-wide garage sale up in Walton, New York, which is like the sticks of, you're going in upstate. I want to say it was probably like a 6-hour drive from Manhattan.
Wow.
It was far. It was really far. And so my son and I were like, hey, we'll go. That sounds fun. We love a good garage sale. At the time, he was a big collector of Pokemon cards. So we would always be looking for Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! And so we were looking for certain things. And the gentleman who was the organizer and his girlfriend, they secured lodging at a campsite. And so we weren't really campers, my son and I. Like, that wasn't our thing. But I was looking for a hotel, and needless to say, in that part of the state, there are no hotels. The closest hotel was probably like 45 minutes from the location that we needed to be in, but there were motels. And because this was, I guess, very well known, this town-wide garage sale for this weekend, all of them were sold out. All like 3. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
That were inside, or right around within this town. And so I kept looking up and trying to figure out where are we going to stay. We really didn't know. And then about a day or so before, the guy said to me, well, you should just call around and see. Maybe somebody canceled, whatnot. So started picking up the phone, calling. Found this one motel. And the woman answered the phone and she said, I don't have anything. And I was like, okay. And I explained to her what we were doing and that it was me and my kid. And she says, I really want to help you out though. She goes, but, I do have the main house. So there's this main house that sits on the property. And then you have basically like a row of the motel rooms, and maybe there's 10 rooms total. Right. And so she goes, I have this main house, but I don't know that I really want to rent it to you for the night, or I think it was for maybe 2 nights or whatever. She goes, but, give me your number and let me think about that. And so I gave her my number. Anyway, she calls me back like the next day and says, have you found lodging? Because she's just said, keep looking. And she calls me back, have you found lodging? I said, no, we haven't found any lodging. We'd really like to go to this. It sounds fun. So she goes, okay, I'm going to rent the house to you. But you could tell she was very hesitant to have us there. And I had asked her questions like, are you living in the house? She said, no, they were, but they had left the home. and they bought another home that was, fairly close by, and they were living in the new home. And she said the only time she was ever there was during the day when she was running the motel, essentially. And I said, okay. So I get excited. My son and I get in the car. We ride up and we get there and we meet her, and she's very lovely. We pay her the money and we check in, and there's no key, except maybe like the front door key, just a house. And you see all these motel rooms, like, a little bit up the driveway and the hill. And so, the people that were at the campground, they were off doing their own thing. And so my son and I are sort of just sitting in the house, and we're trying to figure out what to do, because there were no activities that day. We kind of went up the day before so we could kind of rest and then wake up and then go in the next day for the sale. So we're sitting there and we're sitting on this couch, and it was a lot of like antique furniture, and nothing was really new. And some was like farmhouse, like maybe rooster kind of motif, everything seemed like older. It had a very older vibe, even the bedrooms and stuff. And so on the first floor, you had like the living room, and there was a secondary room. You had the kitchen, you had the front office, which was like the desk area where you come in. And then you would go upstairs, and there were 3 bedrooms upstairs. And, there was some, I think I remember some dolls on a bed. And then it just seemed like an interesting house, yes. And like quilts and, and so, we went upstairs to see like, what room will we sleep in and things like that. And so we just checked it out. As we were walking around, we started feeling very unsettled, like just weird. Mm-hmm. I know weird's kind of not really a good term for that, but like icky.
Oh, that's a good word.
Yeah. Like it felt very icky. Like you don't belong here. Right. And then we came back down, and we're sitting on the couch, and we're sort of like looking at each other. And I literally said to my son, what do you think about this house? And he goes, I don't like it. And I said, you don't like it? And he goes, no. And I go, does it feel weird? And he goes, yes, it feels weird. He's like, I don't like it here. I don't want to stay here. And I was like, you don't want to stay here? He's like, no. I go, I don't want to stay here either. Right. And I was like, but we just drove like 6 hours and there's no hotels in sight. So then as we're moving around and I'm feeling all this anxiousness, essentially now it's becoming anxious, where him and I are both becoming anxious. So then of course, what do? I phone the one person that I know that talks to people on the other side, JD herself. I'm like, ring, ring, JD, I need you, girlfriend. I don't know what's going on right now in this house, but this is what's happening here. We have this weird feeling and it feels really icky, and neither Dom or I are comfortable. We feel like we don't belong here. Like it just feels like heavy and dark, and we couldn't really explain it, right?
And I will tell you, because I remember this conversation, like when we were all talking about this earlier, I remember standing there. I was in my driveway when I got the call. I think it was sometime in July, if I remember correctly. And you're trying to explain to me the situation. I'm like, wait, are you at a hotel? Because again, this was before Airbnb was a thing, where like it was common to stay in other people's homes. And so I'm like, wait, you're in somebody's home? Do you know this person? No, I don't know this. What do you mean you don't know this person? So because I'm trying to get a handle on where the heck she is. Like, okay, I got that you're in New York. You're in somebody's home that you don't know. So just trying to even understand the setup, let alone spiritually what was happening. I was so confused.
Yes. And we didn't have pictures back then. Like we didn't think about it. Like there was no, like, I'll send you a photo and I'll text it to you. I think I had a BlackBerry. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
That's how long ago this was. My son might have even been like 9 or 10. You know, it was quite some time ago. And so I remember her and I being on the phone and her saying to me, yes, she's picking up on people that are in the house that are of the house from prior, and that they're still there, and no, they don't want us there. And so I remember I'm outside on the phone with her because I'm trying not to make my son weird that I'm talking with her, like about, what could potentially be happening. Right.
Yeah. I remember that.
Yeah. So I'm outside, and I remember when I went out the side door, there was like one of those little swings, like a 2-person swing.
Yes.
It was like metal, like you just sit down on it. And I remember I sat down on it, and I'm on the phone with her, and I go, somebody's sitting next to me. I can kind of make out who it is. It's like an old woman. I can see she has like silver hair and it's kind of short, and I see her body structure. I'm like, I can't see her, but I see her silhouette. I can feel her. This is freaking me the hell out. Like, what is going on right now? And
Yes.
and she's like, wow, you can see her? Like, because that had never happened to me before.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know what's happening, but make it go away. Make this stop. Like, I do not want to be part of that. So she was like, okay. And then she started talking to this lady, whoever this woman was. You figured out that she had lived there. Maybe it was her home from previous, right?
I will say that part, when I start going into the trancy part, I don't remember as much. So all the details leading up to, I remember pretty clearly. But like once I got in the moment, I'm sure you remember that way clearer than I do, because I get in this like weird foggy state because I'm literally tuning into the unseen, or in your case, seen.
Yes.
And so I have to be in like almost a trancy state. So sometimes I can remember, but this one, the actual details of like the spirits themselves were a little bit foggy. Your reaction was clear.
Yes. I was scared out of my gosh darn mind over there. I was like, I don't know what's happening over here.
Okay, so listeners, if you're ever at an Airbnb and you want Jay and I to connect with whatever is at that place, give us a call at 617-918-7161 and we will validate your feelings.
I highly recommend.
Oh my goodness.
Highly recommend.
I'm telling you, now you just gave us a great new business idea. We can get just Venmo us, and we will, if you're at an Airbnb, we'll cleanse the space for you before you get there. Like, I think we're onto something.
We're getting to that part because we did cleanse the space. So that did happen. I remember she told me though about this woman and saying like, she's not going to harm you. She just lives there. Like, this is her home, but she is territorial and she's not leaving. And no, they don't want you there. And there are others besides her. They don't want you there. But she said the house had a lot of negative energy to it. So whatever had occurred there was a lot of negative energy within the home. And potentially that's why the woman who owned the motel, when she moved out, she got away from that which she was feeling, which is why they didn't want to live in the home anymore. Right. So I remember her saying like, what I need you to do is you have to go to each room and you and your son are going to do this together. And you're going to take your finger and you're actually going to write on the walls and the furniture, any place that you sense that you think needs some positive white light energy. You're going to take your finger and you're going to write like joy, love, peace, prosperity. Like, we're going around writing on these walls. And before that happened, though, I do want to go back and say that the camper, the gentleman and his girlfriend, they came over. And they were talking to us, and they had given us a charger to charge our phone, because our phone. And so, but they had left. And so we were still in the house, and it was started to get dark. And that's when we looked at each other and we were like, we're not staying here. Him and I felt so strongly. And that's when I called her again, and she gave me now you're going to do the words and leave the house better than when you walked into it, to help them. And so that's what we did. We walked around, but we got the heck out of there. We didn't even stay for the garage sale the next day.
Oh, wow.
We left a note with the charger for the friends, because I didn't have a way to contact him. He was at the campsite, and we knew he was going to come back in the morning. So we left a note for him with the charger. I left a note for the lady who owned the place. And I just said, listen, some things happened here that did not feel very good staying in this home. We have blessed it. We wish you lots of luck. You can keep our money. I'm not asking for a refund, but we have decided to depart. And, we'll thank you again for your kindness. Like, we just kind of left it at that, and then we drove all the way back.
Wow. Oh man, so now my question is this place still in existence without kind of revealing its location? Is it still around that you know of, or?
You know what? I don't even know that I would remember the name of the place that I went to. I mean, if I looked at maybe a credit card charge from, 2005, you know what I mean? Like that would be the one way that I'd be able to tell.
Wow. So yeah, like you had me at she hesitated. I was like, oh, okay, this is like TV movie stuff. Like so
Yeah.
what do you think would have happened if you had stayed? Like, do you think that you would have like seen something or heard something, or like, I know that just the uneasy feeling was enough to make you leave, but what were you anticipating would happen that you were trying to avoid?
So I think the fact that I did see something and I had that experience along with all of the feelings of, I don't want to say dark energy, but like heavy energy,
Yes.
right? Because dark versus light, right? Duality. And so I felt like not even just for me, the fact that my son was picking up on all of that and felt uneasy.
Yes.
He has a very solid compass. And so when we're talking to each other and we're both in harmony and in agreement that we feel the exact same way, and regardless of what might have happened, neither one of us was willing to be curious. This was not a curious situation for the two of us. It was, I know earlier you said, it would be easier to be angry than afraid, right? But in this particular case, we weren't angry, but there was some fear involved in terms of like, where are we? Who are we among, essentially? And, we just decided, we made a conscious decision that we were not willing to continue on with engaging in that kind of activity.
I'll admit, I thought this story at first was going to go in a completely different direction when you said you were going to a garage sale. So even like garage sale, antiquing, all that stuff with energy attached to objects. I thought you'd brought something home attached to an object, but even visiting this location, did you come home uneasy? Did you have to like kind of go through a cleansing when you got home? Do you think that something followed you for a few days? Because I know sometimes people bring residual energy home, and even if something isn't quite attached, there's that few days of almost detaching that energy from you and detaching from that location. Did you have any like uneasiness or anything when you got home, or your son that you experienced after you returned?
I've never really thought about that because it's so many years ago. It's possible. But what I do remember is that JD and I did work together after when I did come home. And I do remember her also doing a clearing while we were still at the home. So she said, whomever is here and what, like, she basically was like, don't come around Dani or her son. Like, you know what I mean? Like she put that boundary into existence to say they're leaving your space and they're not coming back, essentially. So let's leave it at that. They visited and they're going, and she put, I believe, if I remember correctly, white light, and also taught me how to do a protection bubble so that we could cloak ourselves within a protection bubble so that there was no other penetration at that point. We were able to digest essentially the white light that she was providing us, and purple energies too. And I know we did a couple of cleanings since that had happened together. But I do know while I was standing there still, as she knew we were leaving, that's when she's like, okay, let's get you disconnected, essentially, so that you're not taking this with you. So I don't think we took anything because we had the graciousness of her and her gifts and abilities and knowledge, her vast, limitless amount of knowledge that she possesses. And so with that being part of the experience, I think that helped us not take that back. But potentially, Lisa, I think you're right. Could there have been a little like, oh, that was weird. You know what I mean? I know we were talking about it on the ride home, like we were spooked, like for sure.
It's interesting kind of revisiting this so many years later, because that really was the beginning of when I started this professionally. And I want to say I was maybe 2 or 3 years into my professional journey. For those who don't know or who haven't like kind of looked at our bios, I have been into metaphysics and cards and this journey personally for over 20 years. But in terms of actively, professionally working with people to cleanse, it's interesting to see how consistent I've remained. Like some of my tactics have changed and evolved as different energies pop in. Some harder to remove energies have popped in. But it's interesting how consistent I've been. I still do the light bubble. I still do the writing on the wall. That was a technique actually taught to me by somebody else I know that was something that Lisa's talked about, passing on the knowledge. That has been passed on by a few people, and I will tell you it works every time. It only lasts for about 3 or 4 weeks though. So if any of you do that as a practice within your home, I've revisited homes a few weeks later. I'm like, oh, you haven't done this in a while. And they're like, you can see that? Like, yes, because the light starts fading. When you do this on all 4 walls, it almost creates like this solid block of light in the room when done properly. And I had gone back in and scanning. I'm like, oh, we haven't done this in a little while, have we? It's like, oh, I'm like, you need to go back and do that. So it does fade over time. Once you write it, doesn't just stay forever. Be nice if it does, but it does fade out. So it's interesting kind of revisiting, like, because it's not just your journey, like it's my journey too, which is interesting with a guest because we don't get that often. So that's kind of cool.
All joking aside from earlier in regards to travel, as an empath, as a medium, that was very difficult for me to stay in different locations, particularly hotels and motels where people are constantly coming in and out.
Yes.
Before my Reiki certification, I got certified, I believe, in 2015. So I think this was the winter of 2015, early in the year. So we were in Florida, did the whole Disney World thing. It was great. Flight got delayed, which happens in New England. It snows up here. We're like, oh, isn't it terrible? We're stranded in Florida. Extra days. Like, how awful. No. So we went to a hotel, and this was before I had known how to like cleanse the space and do whatever. I'm going to try to keep this as light as possible, but there was an assault in that room that I picked up on from the point of view of the victim. And that has stayed with me for so long. Like, I don't even like to talk about it still, because of the energy I picked up on, like the whole situation. I got it. Like, I knew exactly what happened. I couldn't wait to get out of there. After my Reiki certification that summer, I did learn how to cleanse the space. So now anytime we stay anywhere, my family doesn't even question it. I go through, energetically wipe down the walls like, some kind of magic eraser. I push the energy outside of the door. I make sure I do that when we leave so that it's clean and open for the next person. Kind of like using a bathroom, leave it presentable for the next person. So again, as an empath and a medium, I think that's important for us to know that that's going to happen, and to make sure that we go to those places ready to cleanse whatever was there before, cleanse on our way out. And we have to be mindful of it. We have to remember that, because we can get caught off guard if we forget to do that.
I don't think it's ever occurred to me to pre-cleanse a space unless I felt something. But I think, unlike you, I tend to walk around closed. I'm not as open initially. So I have to work, or it has to be really strong for it to kind of break through that force field. But now that you're saying this, when I do travel again, I am absolutely going to be prepared to do that. Yeah. That's some good advice. Mm-hmm. But I also want to extend it to hospital stays. If you have to be in a hospital.
Yes. Yep.
Which until this moment, I never thought about, but it's like, oh, I've had to be in the hospital a few times. So I'm going to kind of do that. Like I have, like if I've gone into a surgery, I have asked the angels to come in, be with the surgeons, be with the, people doing the surgery, but I never thought about the space itself. And hotels, hospitals, museums, restaurants, certain old restaurants, there's so much energy built up that empaths can be very overwhelmed in these spaces. So oftentimes, like, people will look at empaths as being shy. No, they're not shy. They're overwhelmed with energy, or they'll be standoffish, or, oh, you don't want to ever go out with us. No, it's because they don't know what to do with all the energy that they're picking up on.
Yeah.
Which I think is why I walk around closed so often, like tighter than a drum most of the time. So.
And I think you're right about any shared space, especially hospitals, even doctors' offices. If someone got bad news, the appointment right before yours, and it's still kind of lingering in there, I do that every time I go to any shared space now, like you did with the location with Dani, is to leave it better for the next person as well, too. It's like, leave no trace other than like footsteps. And even those I want to make sure I wipe out too, because I don't want anybody picking up on my stuff either. So yeah, this led to a great conversation about space and locations. But to go back to even the objects, Dani, I know that you do this often. Have you ever brought something home that once you brought it home, it made you feel uneasy having it there? Or did you have anything that you were like, I changed my mind about this, let me pass this on to somebody else?
The answer is yes. And I want to go back to your other question and say that as you've been talking about this, I think the reason that a big reason why we wouldn't stay, and this wasn't a curiosity, right? So this is the first time anything like this has really happened at this strong, this level, and anything of that nature. Any sense of feeling out of control or even powerlessness, I wasn't for it. I was like, no, I'm not willing. So I needed to stay in control for my family. I needed to stay in control for us. So I feel like when JD gave me those tools, and I knew that she had the abilities to make sure that she had that intention and she was in control. She knew that I know that I can tell you no, and they have to listen, right? So this was all new to me, right? So you say, no, you're not welcome. That she could do that. So I had complete faith in her and trusted her with this situation to know that she knew exactly how to handle it. It helped put me and my young son back in control so that we didn't feel that powerlessness. And not just to the home or the entities in the home, but the things in the home. Like you were just saying, like the lamp, you could just sense like whatever was happening, because we were drawing on pictures. Like it wasn't just the walls. Like she said, touch anything you think might need to feel this lightness, this whiteness. By the way, I have the chills now. But like, we're like, saying joy, saying abundance, saying peace, like whatever that is, we just touched whatever called out to us. And it was objects, not just the home that was happening to. I wanted to circle back to that for a sec because you really touched on it and it brought up quite a bit.
I know listeners, you can't see this, but I'm totally tearing up right now because, and thank you for saying all of that, because a big part of my mission in doing this, and whenever I teach other people how to do readings or private sessions or this kind of work, I have 3 tenets that every reading or session needs to be one of or all 3 things: healing, helpful, and empowering. And the fact that you said that word, because there's a lot of readers out there, and this is, we talked about this like on what not to look for or what to avoid as a red flag in a previous episode. But there are a lot of readers who will disempower their clients with fear so that they keep coming back to them. They don't want their client to have any sort of independence because there's a loss of money stream. You've lost your financial stream of income. And to me, I think because it's not what I do all day, every day, it's something I do because it's a passion, it's a love. I really do focus on the empowerment part. And the fact that you were able to leave our conversation empowered absolutely means the world to me. And I'm so happy that that's what it did for you, because I want anybody who listens to this podcast to feel empowered to take control of their spiritual self. You have that power. You do not owe any spiritual submission to any other entity, being, whether it's on this plane or another plane. That we are divine light beings I don't care what anybody's spiritual background is, we have that inner flame. And I think the more we deny that, the more powerless and out of control we feel. And sure, there's going to be things that we're not in control of, and that we just have to trust that everything will end as it's supposed to. But anything that we can control, that we can take care of ourselves. You know, I once worked with somebody we both knew, who said, why don't the angels just come in and fix everything for us? You know, dark energy or dark people, you know, they're always being helped and they're always being taken care of. It's because if the angels fix everything for us, or if the other side fixes everything for us, we will never learn, because we won't have to. We will never evolve to step into our light and our own power, because we won't have to. It's like if you're working with a child, if you're teaching a child, if you do everything for them, then when they grow up, they expect everything to be done for them, and they're basically helpless because they have no inner knowledge. So I want my clients or the people who work with me to step out of our sessions feeling like, yeah, I can do this. I can handle this. And sometimes even professionals need help from other people. Like, we don't never need help. I need help. I need somebody to scan my house because I can't see my own stuff. You know, so it is good to get outside help. But if you can take care of some of the basics yourself, man, you can have a better sleep at night. You can feel comfortable in your own space, be that work, car, home, vacation spot.
We touched on this a little bit before we actually started recording this episode too, that as teachers and mentors, we don't want to be there forever. I mean, we'll be there to support you, but we really want to pass on the tools that we have, the knowledge that we've accumulated. We want to pass that on to you, and not only hope that you master it for yourself, but that you pass it on too, that there is a lineage there of increasing this community by sharing our knowledge, sharing our experiences. And so to hear you talk about how Jay helped you, I was misting up a little bit too, because that's so much what we want to do, is just build the community of people that are sharing and communicative, and you know, just we come from the same place and we want to be able to share that space with others.
Yeah.
I will say that information that she parted on me a dozen years ago, that has been shared tenfold. There have been others that have used those techniques. And I think the important part is knowing that we have community, because when you're in that fight, flight, freeze, fawn,
Yes.
whatever state you're in, you forget. Put the bubble. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But you remember, I have a friend that knows what to do. You know, you have the call your number 617 right away, right?
617-918-7161.
Yes. Call that number immediately if you need some guidance, because they will pick up and help.
Oh my gosh, it's funny.
And here's the thing. Not only was it helpful then, another light bulb moment just happened during this experience, this newly created experience from something that happened so long ago. And one of the things that I have been working on now is that I recognize that throughout my life, I would put myself into unhealthy experiences and I wouldn't know how to take myself out. And I would just stay in them, whether it be relationship or job or family, something that isn't right, even let's say spiritual, right? And so what this just did for me in this moment, reliving this, is it reminded me that I had a friend who had the skills to teach me that I can and will be able to discern in those times to take myself out of those unhealthy situations. And I successfully did that. That instead of having a check mark on one side going, you didn't take yourself out, check, 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 check. I have a check mark over here on the other side now that says, I did it. I got myself out. I didn't just sit there. I didn't sit there and suffer, or I didn't sit there and let my son suffer. And I didn't sit there in fear or in denial or none of that, because my friend gave me exactly what I needed, because she is a skilled professional in what she does. And she helped empower me. She was helpful to me, and she made me healthy.
That's another thing I think that Jay and I based our show on, was to be the person that we needed when we were struggling.
Yes.
Jay and I have had experiences since childhood, and you don't know who to go to. You don't know who to share these things with. And to have someone that you can reach out to help you with this stuff, and to know that you're not alone, and to know to really be for other people the person that you needed. And again, to be able to pass that on to somebody else is so huge. So I love hearing about this so much right now. Like, I'm getting like all the little, like, the warm fuzzies right now. Like, it's super cozy.
Thank you. And I want to add too, to your list, JD, you are an excellent support system. That's what it is. And Lisa, I'll give you that too, because you are of that same nature, right? And so literally, if anyone is listening today and they're going through anything in terms of something they just don't understand, this stuff it's not always figure outable, right? The people who maybe are having the experiences and are having trouble understanding them, they need to know that you two are an excellent support system. And that even if, like me, at that time, I didn't have a lot of support. I was a young mother raising my kid. I had a lot of chaos in my life. There was a lot of external entities, things, and listen, looking back now, I create my own reality. But back then, being a young 20-something mother, I didn't know any of that. But to know that I had the support was something that I knew nothing about, that scared the living daylights out of me. You can't be not grateful and not want to share that. I've probably told, 1,000 people about her in 10 years. You know what I mean? So to me, I feel like that's the gift that you two keep on giving. And I think the work that you're doing now with this podcast and marrying the two things together of the metaphysics and the paranormal, I think that you two are on an excellent path. And I think that there are going to be a lot of people that are going to listen to what you have to say.
Listeners, Dani is an unpaid sponsor of Visit with Spirit. Oh, thank you, Magic Voice. I had to make Jay laugh because I'm watching her on my video and I'm like, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry.
Oh my gosh. I am so emotional right now. And that's something I'm not great at, is letting emotions flow as I should. But as Dani said, we are trying to set up that support system for a bigger audience. And hopefully the people that we help will then become part of that support network. Mm-hmm. But if any of you want to get in contact with us, not only the number, but if you go to our website, you can read more about us individually. There's contact information. I run an online space called the Indigo Pompeian. Lisa runs the Chattering Lotus. And we do work with people one-on-one, but we will also help you absolutely as a team, because we both believe that working together can be helpful. Actually, I worked on a space that needed a lot of extra TLC, and I actually called Lisa in to just kind of step in, double check, make sure there was nothing I missed, and vice versa. So we do work together and collaborate on more than just this podcast. And we are each other's support network, because I think a lot of practitioners miss out on that joy and that comfort of having somebody else have their back, because they rely on their spiritual team, or they want to be the star of the show. And it's like, it becomes very egocentric, where it's all about me, me, me. And it's like, sometimes you can't do it all by yourself. So whether you're calling in the angels or your spirit guides or your trusted spiritual friend, and, I have a couple go-to people that I do trust with like my spiritual well-being on stuff that I cannot see, because you can't always see your own stuff. Somebody who comes in to physically, like, actually clean your house is going to see neglected corners that you haven't looked at in years, because you walk by it and you don't give it a second thought. They're like, oh, yeah, that's dusty. We need to dust that out. And you're like, oh, I never thought to clean that. Huh. So whether it's physically organizing or cleaning a space, or spiritually cleaning yourself, your space, having the support team is so important. You know, I also do life coaching, and one of the important things is that the life coach shouldn't be the only person on that support team. There should be nutritionists and therapists and counselors. Like, you don't have to be a one-man, you know, like the one-man band, like playing the cymbal and the harmonica and the drum all at the same time. No. Just like, other people can be on this team helping and working to heal that person so they can heal themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're not the healers, friends. We help you to put you in the space where you are able to heal yourself.
Yes.
You know, anybody who goes to you, and that there's another red flag, that I am a healer. No, you are the vessel through which healing flows. Let's not confuse that. And sometimes it's just creating that space where somebody can step into their power and step into their light. And I think that's really the biggest goal in this podcast, is giving people a space to step into their light and have clarity in what's happened.
Amen, sister.
Listeners, this was an amazing podcast today. So many things that I was not expecting, like all the warm fuzzies that we got from Dani as our new unofficial sponsor for Visit with Spirit. Again, magic voice. Clearly, we have another person on the show. I don't know where they came from. But listeners, thanks again for joining us. Dani, thank you so much for joining us today. This was fantastic. Again, I love that these episodes are almost like they have these subplots that bubble up from the original subject. And it's like we go on these amazing journeys together. So yes. Dani, thank you for being our travel guide today to an amazing journey.
You're welcome. To many more stories that I have to tell you to. So
we might need to have a part 2 and part 3 with you, I suspect.
I think so. Yes.
Well, once we start talking about the singing bowls, we have a whole nother level of going from fear, right? I say this, once you learn to go from victim to hero,
yes,
that's when you really come into it and you go, okay, this isn't so scary and I get what's going on. And that, I think, is going to be very important for people to make that transition.
Yes.
Season 2 is just building itself for us. So manifest. Folks, thanks again so much for joining us today at Visit with Spirit. May love and light surround you and your loved ones. Thank you for joining us today for our Visit with Spirit. We hope you enjoyed listening. If you have any questions or comments, or would like to be a guest on our show, email us at visitwithspirit@gmail.com or find us on social media. Until next time, may love and light surround you, and come back again to Visit with Spirit.